Meeting for Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. Welcome to all. We'll begin with a roll call. Trustee Ron Wilson.
Here.
Trustee Walt Mashevsky. Happy New Year and here to you too. Trustee Neil Gaynor.
Here.
Alternate trustee Emily Britt.
Here.
Trustee Kent Maggart.
Here.
Trustee Keith Lincoln.
Here.
Trustee David Smith.
Here.
Trustee Hugh Connett.
Here.
And Trustee Bob Lux is here, and Trustee Paul Martin.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. We have an agenda. We can have a meeting. We'll begin with a invocation and pledges of allegiance. Heavenly Father, we come to you today as an assembled body. We humbly request that you bless our meeting, our community, and our nation. Help us to work diligently, always for the common good and in the best interest of those who we have been elected to represent. Guide us to be insightful and prudent in our intentions, visions, plans, deliberations, decisions, and their fulfillment. Work through us to provide a spirit of welcome to all in attendance, to engage in respectful and thoughtful dialogue and discussion with understanding, wisdom, and humility. Amen.
Amen.
If you wish, prior to reciting the pledges of allegiance, please take an additional moment of silent prayer or reflection in the manner of your preference. Thank you. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pledge to the Texas flag.
On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one faith, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay. Shelley, do we have any comments from the public this evening? Okay. Do we have any update from Region H from Arthur? He was here earlier. I know that they did not have a meeting since the last presentation that Arthur had. I know they're having one. I think it's January 16th, I read, so they'll be presenting next month. Milda is not here, apparently, from the upper watershed. Can you
I
fill us in?
can fill you in. Yes, there's no report. The Regional Flood Control Planning Group, Flood Planning Group is meeting tomorrow, January 9th. So hopefully there will be an update at our February meeting.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, consent agenda, pages 1 through 16. Have any questions on these?
Okay, accept as presented.
We have a motion to accept. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion on this matter?
I had a couple of minor corrections on the minutes, but I can get them to Shelley already.
Okay.
She moved them.
So there will be approved as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Abstain? I abstain. I wasn't here. I abstain on the minutes only. I will
Abstain as well.
report, and Emily will abstain as well. Okay. Very good. Okay. Agenda item number 9. Review and consider approval of district's fiscal year 2023-24 draft audit report. Ron Wilson. Ron?
The audit committee is 2/3 of the audit committee, unfortunately. Red Hawk couldn't be here. But he has reviewed the report. We went over with John, Knox, and Knox and whoever. And we recommend approval. John's here to answer questions if you might have any specific questions.
You had included, pardon me, in our meeting package was the draft agenda, excuse me, the draft report. And open the floor to discussions, questions.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Maybe it's my really lack of knowledge to understand it, but capital assets.
The dates are wrong.
Yeah, there's no change or any, I mean, with the price of, is this what we own here or is that what that is?
Yes.
The building and so,
Yeah.
but there's no change in the,
Building the vehicles, the field equipment, yes, sir.
you got 2023 and then 2024.
Yeah, that. The draft that you have has the wrong dates on it if you're
Oh,
looking
okay.
at page 17.
Page 8.
Maybe
Page 8 has the primary summary, capital assets.
17. Yes, that should be 23. It's been corrected.
There's no appreciation in the values or anything?
Yes, there is depreciation, 109,000.
That's all?
Twenty-three.
The value of this land, the property, everything, like 109,000.
Yeah, the land doesn't depreciate, but the administrative building depreciates probably over 30 or 40 years, and then the equipment probably 5 to 7.
Depreciates, not appreciates. You're asking about value going up though, aren't you, Walt?
Yeah, we don't record appreciation until you sell it.
Okay.
Yeah, we keep it in a
Oh,
small.
so that answers that then. Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion?
And any observations from last audit to this audit that stood out to you at all?
None that I can think of. I'm sorry to say that. But everything going pretty smoothly.
Okay.
There was no
We
further.
do have an auditor communication letter and I don't know if we issued a management letter. I can't remember now, but we do have an auditor communication letter that specifically states that we had no disagreements with management, that there was nothing that came to our attention that we considered significant.
This is your second audit, I guess? You saw the first audit. Any observations on your side? Or
No, it looked consistent with what we have in our numbers.
Okay.
So. Pretty good.
processes are good? Okay. And the new system looks good. Obviously, it works, right? Yeah, good.
Okay. Further questions? Okay, hearing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Did you have a question?
No, I don't think we need a second for committee recommendation.
Well, true. Okay. Maybe it was for the
Anyway, sorry.
for the agenda. Maybe that's what you seconded. Excuse me. Thank you for keeping me on track. Keeping watch. Very good. Very good. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion carries. Thank you. Okay. That brings us to agenda item 10. SJRA report. Chris Meeks, please. Good evening.
So you're gonna call Ed this time. One time. Actually, that's next month.
Great job, Chris.
Except for next month, I won't be here, so it'll be Ed. All right, so our report was not in your packet, but it has been printed over here. If somebody does not have a copy of the 3 pages, let me know, I'll give them to y'all. Due to holidays, vacations and stuff, early trustees meeting, we were not able to get in your package. So I apologize for that, but it will be in your packets. So What you'll have is the monthly operations report for the Woodlands for December. Nothing out of the ordinary. There's no violations. We did have some high peak flows for the rain events that occurred around Christmas Eve or on Christmas Eve. So you'll see those no violations, but they're there. Projects are tracking along and financials are hopefully going to be in the mud packets next week. The other thing that you'll see is you will have, of course, the GRP November monthly operations report. With GRP, same issue as the Woodlands. Financials are still lagging behind just slightly. As soon as I get the updated financials for GRP, I will provide them. One thing to note when I am talking about the financials, that is only the monthly reports. The project financials on these type of sheets for Woodlands and GRP are up to date. So this is the most accurate information. It's just the other information that is currently still in development. The last thing that we have up here for you is an update on the AC waterline condition assessment testing. So this first page is what we call the one pager. It's the one pager. So this is just a high level overview of what's occurred, what's going to occur, how much work's been done, how much has been funded so far or paid out so far. Following that, on the next few pages is a quick update from the consultant on the phase 1 testing. This is the non-destructive testing that was done on the AC water lines. Kind of tell you a little bit about what they found. Also explains why they're moving into phase 2 and what they're going to be doing. So phase 1 was non-destructive testing to help identify and target where the destructive testing should be, which is phase 2. Also a part of phase 2, we will have some additional non-destructive testing as well. You get more bang for your buck with the non-destructive testing. The destructive testing is used just to kind of tone in and make sure that the non-destructive testing is accurate. The thing that's also in here is you will have 2 maps. The one is going to say at the bottom, phase 1 AC water lines. This shows you where all the non-destructive testing was done within the Woodlands. The second map is going to show phase 2 of the AC water line testing. This is where the destructive and the additional non-destructive testing will be done. High level overview. I know you've not had a chance to review it, but once you do, I'll answer any questions you have, or if you have any right now, I'll answer what I can.
These are gonna be in the mud packet
Yes,
next week.
they're provided to Shelley and she'll make sure they're in there.
Next week, we have questions.
Which is perfectly fine. But I did want to make sure we got it to y'all so y'all could read it. If you have any low hanging fruit questions, then I'll definitely answer what I can.
Hearing none, thank you very much, Chris. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 11. Review the wastewater treatment facility number 1 condition assessment evaluation update presentation by Corolla Engineering. Want to introduce this? You go right to, this is Victor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Mira, Corolla, Russell is here to give a quick update. While she's passing out her presentation, I did want to give you an update on the decision matrix. 7 of the 10 MUDs have filled theirs out, and I'm happy to report we had some great, good discussion and collaboration amongst all the 7 boards that have completed it. And we've got 3 more to go in January, and then we'll give it to her.
Already?
The TV screens get put up.
Well, it's getting close.
Get close,
We
okay.
got multiple bids, and they want to tackle it 2 different ways. And so, and one is double the price. So I'm trying to figure out if the other option will do what we need it to do. So we're working on it. But yes, we're eager as well to get rid of this. Yes.
Thank you, Connie. Well, good evening, trustees. I really appreciate you giving us this opportunity to give you a progress update on where we are on this project. And Happy New Year, by the way. I hope you guys had a great time with your families during the holiday season. Also quickly wanted to introduce my colleague, Felicia James, here today with me as well. She'll do a portion of the presentation. Felicia is the asset management expert for us and she led the condition assessment on site at the wastewater treatment facility number 1. So we'll get a little bit into it. What I wanted to talk today about is the project progress, where we are overall. Felicia is going to cover the existing condition verification progress, what we did on the site, how we performed the condition assessment, and what we found. And just a sidebar here. Our scope was to look at the existing facility from both the condition assessment perspective for what the condition of each asset is, but also look at the capacity evaluation for each process area, each unit area. So today, our presentation is only solely focused on the condition, the actual physical condition of each asset on site. And for capacity, existing capacity evaluation will come back the following month and give you more of a briefing overall update. After we go through that, I wanted to talk about our recommendation for the structural assets, and then we'll end the presentation with the overall schedule of the project again and where we are. So to begin with, this is some of the similar graphics that you guys had seen last time. It's our schedule, overall schedule on the project. Our first task was to do the condition assessment. We started that in October. And this is a little different than what you saw last month when I presented in December. We were supposed to end this in February, but because of the structural recommendation that I'm going to talk about later in the presentation, we are extending this task end date to March, end of March. But we are about 80% complete on this assessment to date. Our second task was to develop the criteria and sub-criteria, which is 100% complete. You all have our final version of the criteria and sub-criteria and the scoring scale as well. One of the other tasks is to evaluate each and analyze each of the alternatives. And what I mean by analysis of each of the alternatives is going into the technical details of each of the 4 alternatives that we are evaluating. So what the technical merits are, what the capacity are, what the what each process area can actually push through the plant capacity-wise. What is the cost? How is the layout going to be on the site for the alternatives 3 and 4, which are 2 new plants, MBR, as well as the conventional activated sludge process. So we are going through that process right now, and we are about 50% complete on that task. The final 2 tasks are finally evaluating each of the 4 alternatives and project delivery analysis. We have not, of course, started either of those 2 tasks. But as you'll notice here, our final end date is still in May, because I know that's critical for you all to make a decision. So we are still targeting a May end date, even with the extension of the condition assessment task. Any questions? Talking about the condition assessment, I'll let Felicia talk to that.
Thank you, Mara. So a review of our scope. We've completed the first 4 items on here. One was to do a site visit, so physically walk the site with our discipline leads to review, confirm, update the existing condition, and also calculate new RUL's remaining useful life. How many years do we expect this asset to be able to serve its intended purpose? And then prepare a list of repair and replace recommendations for the base case scenario. Other activities that are currently ongoing is identifying regulatory compliance deficiencies, capacity concerns. Mira just talked about the capacity analysis that's being done and redundancy. And then once we have both of those, the capacity and the condition, have a summary table of the results and develop an implementation plan schedule for the base case. So before going on site, we were looking at different sources of information. This is the dashboard that shows the asset register out of your enterprise asset management system for Woodlands and the data. So this was our starting point for understanding what is the register of all of the assets at the wastewater treatment plant 1. The next data source was,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So when we started looking through this, we looked at all the actual assets that SGRA has in their asset manager, enterprise manager. The one thing that is not on here is the yard piping. So we did not look at the yard piping because, again, we couldn't assess it. We couldn't visually see the yard piping. It's all underground. So that is not on, that was not evaluated or looked at or assessed as part of this scope of work that we are talking about today. Today, it's only above grade structures.
Is this a replacement cost here number, a real number, or just a? I don't know.
That's a summary of the data out of the database. That would be, it's not a project replacement.
Right, order of magnitude.
Right, order of magnitude.
This is the whole plant? This is level 4 down?
Yes, as it's represented in the database, correct.
But as you'll see, we'll notice that there are some assets that are not, that are in the, that are not on, they're on site, but are not in the asset management. So we look through each asset on site as we walk through that, and we create an additional list as well. So this does not capture those assets.
Right.
Also.
So findings that we had in the field, we would also provide that back as well.
And this RUL graph at the end, on the XY bar,
Yes,
is that 1 to 10 years, or is that, what is that, months, or what
no,
is
those
that?
are in years, remaining life in years.
And
Yes.
then the going up, the Y-axis, I mean.
The
the
Y-axis is
the X-axis,
Is the count of assets,
or count of assets.
count of assets. So you can see in that 21 to 30, a lot of assets showing that, or a lot of assets showing they have about 21 to 30 years remaining life. And
And sorry, Felicia,
Yeah,
but
go
this also shows you, it's a snapshot before we started the condition assessment. So this will need to get updated based on our results.
And this data came from where? This
Uh,
table?
This came from the existing SGRA EAM system. So they maintain an,
This is
asset
this,
keeper.
that, I forget, they have a 5-letter
Yeah,
name.
enterprise asset management.
That's it,
Yes,
asset management
That's
system.
correct. That's where this came.
right. Also referred to as a computerized maintenance management
That's it,
system.
that's
It's where the CMMS, yes,
Yeah.
where they track the work. Exactly. The other source of information was the field assessment that was done previously. So that work, while the report is dated March 2023, the actual field work was done in April 2022. So one of our tasks with this scope was to review the results that were done in 2022 and identify any changes that have happened in the interim years. That report, from what we gleaned out of it, they had provided observed, calculated, and proposed remaining useful life in years for the mechanical, electrical, and structural assets, the count of the totals there. And then they also looked at the likelihood of failure score that's scored on a 1 to 5, where 1 is best and 5 is worst. So there were 124 total assets with scores in that report that we then would compare. And you can see from the previous graph in the upper left corner, 630 assets total. Not all of them you're going to be able to do a visual assessment on. So in our assessment, again, we did a 1-day visit. We had our assessment team, mechanical process engineer, structural engineer, electrical engineer, and instrumentation and controls. We covered a total of 324 assets. And of those, we were able to, as I said, compare them with the 2022 assessment, update remaining useful life value estimates. So we looked at what was done in 2022, looked at what our team of discipline leads, and then identified recommendations for repairs or replacements. This resulted in providing updated likelihood of failure scores. So that's that 1 to 5 for 93 of the assets that we looked at. We also assigned for each asset a remaining useful life. And rather than doing a pinpoint of a single year, we put them into what I call ranges of years or buckets. So we looked at things that have a remaining useful life of less than a year. That would be the 5 down at the bottom, going bottom to top, 1 to 4 years, 5 to 9 years. Those are the ones you really need to kind of watch and begin to plan for. 10 to 20 years, and then greater than 20 years. And the idea with the greater than 20 years is there would be an eventual assessment between now and then you would update and have a better understanding of those. We were comparing our estimates of when we expected reinvestment based on that remaining useful life to the Freeze and Nichols report from 2023. And then we just updated the dates from their report so that we were comparing on the same timeline. And then any assets that we looked at that weren't covered in the report, we used the data from that dashboard to compare. Any questions on that? I'd like to see what the results were. So this is a chart in bar format where the y-axis is the count of assets, and represented here are the mechanical, electrical, instrumentation, and control assets. And the scores, again, 1 being best, 5 being worst. And then the pie chart shows the same thing, but you can see the relative percent of assets that way. Looking at this, you'll see that the bars for 1 and 2 are pretty tall relative to the others, which would give the idea that, you know, things are in good shape. Your 3s are the ones where those are something to watch. And then the 5s are the ones that need very near action, and the 4s are as well. Before I go to the next slide, keep in mind that these are mechanical, electrical, instrumentation, and control assets. A lot of those have relatively short useful lives. So yes, they look good today, but we're not expecting them to not need some reinvestment, say it the other way around, but we still would expect them to need reinvestment in 5 to 10 years, which is what the next graph will show.
Could you clarify on this particular graph or this illustration for your likelihood of failure? What is the window again? A window of time. What is the time span that for likelihood of failure for this?
Oh, so this represents the condition as of today when we when we assessed it back in October.
So this.
So the next slide I think will help you understand.
Actually, if you go back to the previous slide, it answers this question.
Yeah, this one.
But the 1 to 5 here doesn't correspond to
Oh, it
the
doesn't. Oh.
LOF. That was just, those are we happen to have 5 different buckets. Let me show you this one. Yes.
Can you go back
Yeah.
to where you were? So based on this, you're saying that there are almost 100, and do you have this broken down between mechanical and electrical? Is that another cut that you do have? You're just not.
I have it, but I don't have it on a slide. Well, I do. I have it on the next slide, but in a different way.
I'd be surprised to see mechanical and electrical have 20-year life. And some of this does, it can take a lot. How would you, in your expert opinion, kind of assess this or grade this facility in the M&E space with this kind of, like, you know, remaining useful life left, that it's been pretty well updated over the time, or just in general, 50-year plan?
If I can show you the next slide while I work on answering your question. So this slide represents what I call the reinvestment timing. When do you need to really reinvest in the infrastructure? And these are buckets. So the 2025 to 2030, so within the next 5 years, and then 31 to 35. So if you combine those first 2 bars, that's 75% of the assets over the next 10 years of the mechanical EI&C equipment. So given the condition of the mechanical now, the light blue bar represents the mechanical assets, and then the dark blue at the bottom is your instrumentation and control. So you can see a lot of that, while it looks good now because it's been well maintained and has been updated over time. Even with those updates and being in good condition, you're only going to expect to get 10 years before you need to. So that's what's driving particularly the next 10 years. Same for the near term. The mechanical ends up falling in that 10 to 15 for the most part, which would be expected for mechanical assets.
That makes sense. Thank you.
And then you can see the distribution, the pie chart of the timing. So the light blue represents that second FAR. That's about almost 60% of your assets right there.
And if you were to look at this kind of from a process blend, let's say, the lifting station versus digester versus clarifier versus, you know, aeration based, and would you see a similar kind of shape to this? I mean, would you, do each of them kind of marry each other up, or are there some big endpoints that are kind of varied?
I'd say from the mechanical perspective, different process areas were, excuse me, reinvested at different times. So some of them are close to original and some of them are newer. A bigger concern and reason why I'm not able to answer your question directly is when we look at the structural components of those. When we look at the structural part of the lift station. So the pump may be okay, but it's in a wet well that really needs work. So for example,
Yeah.
so it's difficult to look at it and give it one because you have to look at the structural and the mechanical, which is one of the things we're really going to get into here. That's one of the issues we ran into is updating the remaining useful life. We can do that pretty confidently for the mechanical assets, you know, your blowers, your pumps, your valves, and the things that we can see. Doing a visual and on the concrete.
Sure.
And coming up with, okay, well, if we repair it, can it be repaired? And what's the remaining life of that repair? That's going to depend on what the underlying structure, does it have good bones, look like.
And is aeration basin 1 and 2 in this?
It is not represented on here. The mechanical components
It's in your
components are,
Okay, right.
but not the structural. Right. Just some snapshots, so you can see we really were out there, so you can kind of see. And I didn't pick the best ones to show you for the slides, but did want you to see some of the ones that were raised as these are, when I say they need reinvestment, some examples here. So we've got digester blowers, secondary thickener gear drive. These are the mechanical assets. Post-effluent blower, lift station, slide gate maybe needs more attention than some of the others. Electrical and INC assets, all in all, I'd say those scored pretty well. Again, because they have really been reinvesting over time, since they have such a short life expectancy. And even when the equipment does last a while, it tends to go out of obsolete more quickly. One note here was, and I don't have a picture of it to show you here, but when it came to comparing the scores with the prior report, we highlighted in our report the MCC, and it's because we were looking at one which we thought was the same as what was done in Friesen. It have scores on the same asset by ID, but they were physically two different assets. So just things we were, as I said, you know, be able to get that information back to update the dashboard. Clarifier, so getting into some of our structural observations, noting the cracks here, and our structural engineer had noted that, you know, while some of them are bigger than hairline, they tended to be at your guardrail anchor locations. So that would be concerning. And then you also had, looking at the condition of the coating, it's now about 20 years old, plus you have some aggregate exposed inside.
What was the coating? Speak a little bit more about the coating.
Oh, the coating, we were noting that the coating had been replaced in 2005 to 2006.
Interior coating.
Interior coating, correct, yes.
That typically has a life of
About 20-ish years. So, yeah, these are, it depends on I was gonna say, it depends on the operating environment. You know, some of them can be in good condition. You can get, 30 plus years, others 15 to 10. So, but as you can see, with the discoloration here, that coating's in need of refreshing.
Clarified 1 is the main clarifier, right? And then 2 and 3 are kind of brought in to help.
Yes.
Is that correct? Are 2 and 3 newer?
No, so clarifier 1 and 2 were built the same time, 1980. clarifier 3 is the newer one.
Okay.
But 1 is where, I believe Christine waste from, correct? Yeah. So that's the workhorse of the plant.
Are 2 and 3 in similar shape?
They're very similar shape. So we only, I mean, we couldn't show, we will definitely in our report, you'll have photos of every asset.
Yeah.
We couldn't show you all of them here, so we just picked some of them.
Are they identical and they're
Very
to
identical.
do what they need to do?
In terms of the,
I know they're
Perform-
staged a little different, but
are you,
yeah, I mean, are they essentially the same? Can they perform the same function?
yes, they should. Now, I don't know if they are wasting, have you tried wasting out of clarifier 3 or?
We'd have to do some piping changes.
Okay.
But they should be able to perform, they're meant to do the same.
Okay. Thanks.
Some examples for digester 3, exposed aggregate and rebar on the concrete. There's wall cracks as well as issues at the, some spalling of the concrete near the handrails and guardrails. These basins were in service while we were doing our assessment, so we're not able to see below the water line. Chlorine contact basins 1 and 2, you can see where these have a coating, a PVC coating. See the difference you're asking about coatings. These were installed in 2004, and you can see that it's a different environment. So they're faring better than the other one.
But at the same time, the baffle walls, the original baffle walls where the coating is applied, that has severe corrosion because again, it's exposed constantly to chlorine. So there is more corrosion, so they had to put the new liner in. And this, one of our recommendations is going to be to look at this, one of the chlorine contact basins as well.
This would be chlorine contact basin 3. So you can see the baffles at the top, they don't have that lining on them. And then you have additional concrete cracks on the walls.
That's not a structural crack though, is it? In other words, that's just a hairline crack. It looks like that they have cracked because of the bolt anchors that they have there.
Some of them are near the anchor, sir, but there are a lot of cracks that are in between the 2 guardrails also. So this particular photo, yes, is near the guardrail, handrail. And that's why I'm going to talk a little bit later
I
on
understand.
why we need to do the additional testing.
This would be the photos from lift station 1. You can see some of the concrete condition down here, and particularly on the stairs and inside. There's the groundwater issues here. Some photos of the wet well for lift station 2. Looking inside, you can see where there's exposed aggregate. There also is a crack on the slab. You can see where that white line where it's been where there's been historical repair. And then for the effluent channel, that first one's a little hard, but it's a close-up photo of the exposed aggregate inside there. And then again, some more of the exposed aggregate on the floor of the effluent channel there. Aeration basin 1. This structure was condemned and it's been out of service since 2013. The top photo shows where supports have been built to help bolster the wall, which has been a structural concern. That's why it's not being used. And it shares a wall with basin number 2. This one has cracks on the wall, a perimeter approximately every 5 feet. And a berm was added to help reinforce that. Well, maybe not the best picture to show the bowing, but this is aeration basin 3. Again, it was full, so we really couldn't see below the water line. But we understand that that one has had leaks when it was emptied. All right, I'm gonna pass it back to Mira to talk more about this whole asset recommendations.
So as you saw from what Felicia showed earlier, when we went to the site, the facility was in operation. So what we looked at was all just visual observation above grade and above the water line. Given the severity of some of the cracks and the quantity of the number of cracks on these structures and the exposed aggregate, and considering the safety of the operations staff that work daily in and out of these structures sometimes, we wanted to recommend doing some additional specialized condition assessment of the structural assets. This is a table showing a summary of, we've selected 5 structures to do some additional testing. And the reason for selecting these 5 is, and not doing every one, there are 21 structural assets on the site. If we did every single 21 of them, all the testing that is required, it would be over $1 million. So we selected 5 of these structures that kind of represents the time when they were constructed, when they were built on site. So assuming that there is going to be some assumption that the same concrete batch was used under certain conditions. And some of the, based on the factor where the leaks have happened or where we have seen additional cracks, we recommend 5 of these structures to have some additional testing. The additional testing would be done by WJE and Associates. They're a national firm and they specialize in forensic concrete testing. They would subcontract under us if you all agree to that, performing this testing over the next couple of weeks. So going into some of the details, what they would look at is they would look at the basins. The basins would have to be emptied out completely so that they can walk into the basins and actually look visually the areas of damage, distress, where the spalling is happening, where there are cracks, if there is any delamination happening of concrete or any erosion, seeing any aggregates. Based on what they look at, quantities and locations, they would finalize some areas, select certain areas for in-depth assessment and sampling. And what I mean by in-depth assessment is looking at potentially doing some impact sounding, the mechanical impact sounding that would be done to understand if the concrete is delaminating in certain areas. They would also look at the ground penetrating radar, use that technology to understand if there are any voids in the concrete or where the rebar is. But not only where the rebar is, but what is the depth of the rebar? Because if there has been some corrosion of the concrete, we would be able to understand whether the structural life of that particular asset. Because at the end of the day, structural assets are what's going to move the needle one direction or the other. So we wanted to make sure that we have additional data to actually make certain decisions on rehab versus repair or replace. They would select certain areas and also perform some core testing, take some cores out. There are 6-inch cores taken out from either wall or slab or slabs of those structures. And they will look at the fluoride content, which will again talk about the corrosive, how much corrosion is happening in the concrete or what the potential is. Also look at the compressive strength of the concrete.
Would you take a core from each of the structural assets that you have listed?
No, we are only looking at cores from Aeration Basin 3, the clarifier, and the lift station. Again,
There's 3 on the materials sampling and laboratory testing, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
sorry.
so not all 5. All 5 will be looked at in terms of the visual observation and mechanical sounding for delamination, but only 3 will be looked at for cores. And it's again we wanted to make sure we were being cost effective.
Are you referring to a rebound hammer type test approach?
So mechanical impact sounding, again, I'm not a structural engineer, I'm a process engineer, wastewater, but what I understand is they will take a hammer and they look at the sound waves to understand if the concrete is delaminating into a sonar system. So they have equipment.
Is it fair to say that, you don't want to spend the money on, let's say, when pick on the aeration basins, if I could, 1 and 2, they're out of service, they're kind of too far gone,
Right.
as it were, right? So that's, don't do that. And then 4, it looks like 3. So if you get 3 and you get an analysis, you try to
That's
map
correct.
it to 4 and say, we'll say 4 is similar without any other
Yes.
feature testing.
That's
Same thing, digester and the clarifier, you're gonna do the same kind of logic there.
That's correct.
Okay.
So we would assume that one is representative
Yeah.
of the others.
Okay.
Areas.
Right.
Has that been done in the past? Do you have reports from the past that show any sort of?
Not
testing like
at
this?
this facility, but the WJE has done various facilities across the country.
Oh, I mean, that's what I meant, our facility.
No, none that I am aware of, no. So talking about overall schedule, again, you guys have seen this graphic earlier, but as we stand today in January, we are recommending that you do additional structural testing for those 5 structures. That would give us the additional data, and we would come back in March to present the results of the overall condition assessment, overall capacity assessment of the existing site, which would be our base case scenario. And it would help us figure out the cost for the repairs versus replacement as well. With that, I will take any questions you may have.
I got a question about,
Put the lights back on 1, 2, 3.
I got a question.
Yes.
Is there anything out here, all this equipment that would cause what I call a catastrophic failure where, let's say within a week or 2 that it couldn't be fixed? Talk about all this mechanical equipment, and pumps and valves and, in other words, where.
There are some safety concerns, right?
No,
Like it's
I'm
hard
just
to.
worrying about, all of a sudden, we're dumping raw sewage in Panther Creek. Is there anything up here, in here that would, if it failed, would cause that to happen?
From visual observation, it's hard to answer that question, unless we open up the pumps and see what the bearings look like, different things look like. So it's
Okay.
hard to,
Yeah, but I'm talking about if a pump goes out, you can.
but there are some assets that are in 5, which are immediately replaced. So there are some assets, yes, in that 4 or 5 category that needs immediate attention.
No, but what I'm trying to get to is if we've got some of those pumps and valves, wouldn't it be good policy to have one on site? I've heard something about delays of certain months and months to get, that's why I'm asking if we've got,
Yeah, spares.
well, in other words, identify things that could cause catastrophic failure and be
Yeah,
ready to
so-
fix them.
When we look at this overall assessment, we are looking at the redundancy component because that's what you are getting to. And so that would be part of the assessment as well, whether each of the process area and equipment, does it have the enough redundancy to continue in case one fails? To answer your question.
And just to add to that as well, we do keep a lot of spare pumps, motors, valves, the standardized, whatever it may be on shelf. And also this year's budget and last year's budget, some of the electrical devices that we could get off the shelf before, but since COVID, we haven't been able to, VFDs and stuff, starters, we have started stocking those as well. So got that covered.
Samir, I think you have here a draft assessment, March 3rd. Is that right in your proposal? This looks like a final assessment. This is the kind of the final assessment version of what you did already, right?
Yes,
So it would be something, not this, but it's a,
it's going to include structural assets and also the capacity. The capacity and for each process area.
yeah, I'm trying to differentiate between March 3rd and April 4th in your proposal where you have your final condition assessment as we're working schedule, right, for a lot of things.
Just make sure I'm looking at.
Is there a material difference between the 3rd and the 4th other than kind of cleaning up the documents? This was your deliverables proposal in the new bit of work, yeah. It was on page 23 in our packet.
Just getting comments. There shouldn't be any There shouldn't be any material changes between third and fourth.
This is really helpful, I think, for everyone to see it and have your discussion behind it. And so I was trying to get a sense is,
Yeah.
would we get something like this March 3rd or kind of April 4th?
March 3rd, our plan is to give you.
Okay, good. Okay.
Oh, so we're gonna get a draft and we'll get a final.
Uh,
Is that how that is gonna work?
So we will give you comment, so draft and final usually are editorial, but just making sure they're editorial comments and their basic changes, some, but the content shouldn't change. But yes, you will see 2 deliverables, but March 3rd, our plan is whenever you have the trustee meeting to come and present similar presentation versus having a report. Of course, we'll send you a final version of the report. But to talk through what we are doing, and what was happened and what the results of the condition assessment was.
Is your instruction or your consulting engineers, testing engineers, are they gonna make a separate presentation?
So that'll be part of that March 3rd presentation.
So they're not gonna even answer questions.
No, they'll be here. I'll bring them with me.
Okay.
I think in there you included, I think you're trying to get caught up on some meetings
Yeah.
that weren't in the original scope, right? I think there's 2 of those that you're trying to kind of get paid for, as it were. Is that fair to say?
We added some additional meetings,
Yeah.
because our original scope only had 1 meeting
Yeah.
presentation. So we added additional meeting to get caught up, but also have future meetings, or any required. And again, if we don't use those are going to be time and material basis. So if we don't use all of them, we are not going to spend it. It's based on the number of meetings we attend.
So would this scope cover a meeting with every MUD?
No, there are
That
only.
doesn't sound like it, yeah.
That I scoped for in this proposal. So anything over that we'll have to revisit, but the plan is for us to cover any combination of trustee meeting or all MUD meeting, help with answer some of the questions.
Yeah, we're considering options to provide what we've called in the past.
All mud.
Type.
Yeah.
We're gonna structure it a little differently, a little bit more officially,
Mhm.
with agendas, and we'll likely have a location change because the room that we've been using for some of the workshop stuff at the treatment plant.
Yeah.
It holds about, I think we've had 38 in there before. And, if we had all 50 board members, we'd be a little bit tight. So Shelley and I are looking at other venues that are a little bit bigger.
Okay.
Than very close.
So you feel the meeting kind of allocation and then next scope of work would get everyone everyone could get the communication.
Sure. I mean, our goal was to get everybody the same information.
Right.
Uniformly.
Exactly.
And that's the goal. However we accomplish that, we're gonna do it the best we can.
A few questions. So this recommendation for additional work, it was solely determined by Carollo based on the visual on-site visit. Okay. And just going down through the work order, number 2, wall cracks were observed. Anyway, the question is there anywhere you did not observe cracking in these structures? I think you answered my question. Yeah, okay. All right. A couple of others. Hang on a sec. We've already answered about oh yeah. The cores are 3 to 4 inches in diameter nominally, and it wasn't clear from this.
About 6 inches.
6 inches depth, okay. How do you remediate the void
So
left?
they are gonna patch it. After they take the course, they make sure that it's patched properly, before the liquid comes back in, the water comes back in to the facility.
Cures, everything.
Yes. That's why the ground penetrating radar will show them where the rebar is and where to avoid certain areas. But they would probably take the pores away, seeing more cracks, more significant damage or distress, to understand why the cracks are happening. And also help us, if it is repairable, what sort of repair do we do so that we can get long-term use out of that asset?
Right, okay, and you've identified a total of 9 days, if I've done my calculations correctly, for these 5 process units. But they're gonna have to be offline for some time for emptying, cleaning. Can we get a picture of the total amount of time they'd be offline?
So they're not going to be offline at the same time. There is no way the plant can operate with, so we will have to do at least two mobilization where they come in and do a couple of structures, and then they'll have to come back in later on the following week or when the SRA can take it down. So it's going to be at least, I would say, 2-week duration, but overall, when you count those stops in between the two mobilizations.
Okay. The plan will continue to operate.
Yes.
Segmenting this study.
And we'll have to make sure that we are looking at, with the staff, the long-term and short-term weather events and make forecasts to understand when we should take the basins down. If we are anticipating heavy rains, we are not going to take the basins down.
You described 2 reports, combined reports, in your deliverables. I think the first one includes the digester 3 and the solids thickener. And then you bundle up the basin, the clarifier, and the lift station into a second report. I think you have some additional. Can you explain to me why you have the kind of extended analysis, as it were, for future corrosion in that second report versus the first one? What was what make your thinking visible behind that?
WJE is going to provide us the 2 reports that will combine them into one report. So our condition assessment report will have one report with everything as attachments to our report, with the WJE's 2 separate. But their detailed assessment is to talk through more about the core testing, because it's going to take them time. So what I told them is I need information as soon as they get done. So the visual observation and mechanical impact sounding can be done pretty quickly. So they would get me that information right away. So we can keep working on our other stuff that we need to do for overall condition assessment while they do the lab testing, which is going to take additional.
That explains it. Thank you.
But our final report will be one report.
The yard piping, you won't be able to see that at all. Sorry. You got it? You know, make any guesses or assumptions or anything?
So we've been talking about it with SRA as well. One of the things that Felicia and we're talking about, that if everybody agrees, we could do just desktop analysis, age-based. The challenge is we don't know we probably will know the age of the pipe when it was installed, but the material, probably some are wrapped, pipes are not wrapped. So that is going to be hard to determine. So there are going to be a lot of assumptions made into this, which is why we have not included them in our condition assessment.
Can you put a sensor into the pipe and analyze it that way?
The challenge would be for accessing the pipe, not being able to take pipe out of service, digging down into it, not disrupting the existing activities.
There's no access while you're in digester, or there's something like that you can put a probe.
One of the out of service.
While they're out of service.
If something was out of service, you couldn't use the piping close to it.
I mean, any of these process units that are going to be out of service, they have a main line that combines all the other process units. It's going to be difficult to isolate those unless we completely shut certain areas down.
The soundings tell you anything? X-ray.
Sounding for the pipe,
The pipe.
if the pipe were above ground and you
Above
could
ground.
get to it, so the
Yeah.
above ground piping, you can do wall thickness testing on those, especially for the metallic pipe. But the very it's a little different than, say, distribution piping, where you can attach to a valve or something because you have
Right.
ready access to it. It's a little harder at a treatment facility. Pipes tend to kind of go all over.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Victor, Ms. James, thank you. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 12, Discuss and act upon a request for a budget amendment to pay for water reclamation facility number 1, additional condition assessment for concrete testing and project communication. Mr. Peterson, lead this off.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this item is in response to what you just heard. And the proposal, was in the packet. And so I think the result of the recommendation that, as we understand, as we just heard, was to do that testing, take the tanks down, do the testing, and bring everything back up. And I think the estimate was 200,000 additional. And so since it would be an adjustment to the estuary budget, that is why the trustees need to act on it. They so choose.
And I'll just add to that, we are proposing to fund this by removing $200,000 from the land acquisition of wastewater plant 1, since it's currently on hold pending the outcome of this, to fund this project. It's already cash on hand. It's not new money we're looking.
Eric, you said 200 is 156, which is the testing and analysis. Is it the other 5, which is communications? 175. Is there another bit there, or you just kind of round it up? When you said 200,
There's a little bit more there, but we're also rounding up a little bit because the thing that the budget does not account for, our O&M budget, is to drop these basins and clean them out. We do not have the staff on hand to clean all that out, so we do need the funds to do that.
So it's like a vacuum truck or something to get the.
Yeah, it's a big Hoover out there.
Looking for part-time workers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Volunteers. A Roomba with a.
exactly.
So that
Give you a big
not
call.
included in the 156 here.
It is not
Way through
included. That would be
college,
an
I'll be
addition.
out there.
So what is
For
the amount
50
that
an
we're
hour.
approving?
200,000.
200,000.
So this current project is budgeted at 634,000.
Okay.
We've already spent 34,000 in work order 1. This work order 2 is approved for 500,000, rough numbers. And then this will add 200,000 on top of that 634,000, which is, if you look on the monthly operations report, on the page, the owner's advisor actually states what the budget is. It's $200,000 on top of that. For the concrete testing, as well as the additional meetings and the cleaning of the 4 or 5 basins. So 200,000 at the end of the day is what we're asking for. We have the other funds for cleaning.
can I ask the same question I asked last month? If we get this information, and whatever it tells us, will we collectively use it and actually apply it to our decision making, or are we going to somehow say it's not worth what it's been done on, or what?
I think this, I mean, I'm pleased with the presentation.
Yeah.
And so I think it goes toward the decision process of whether we need to, repair or replace.
My
I think
opinion,
it's-
this is what should have been the first thing done in 2022. That's my opinion. So we're getting there.
Yeah, so going forward, that's what I'm looking for, David. I mean, it's that acknowledgement that this work is
I
valuable,
think this.
Very credible.
That's
very credible.
credible discussion.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to just have that out in the open.
We need to make a motion.
Very good. Motion is required. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr.
Chairman.
Lincoln. Yes, sir.
This was assigned to the audit committee to look at it, and I think we do have a couple of comments, or Chairman has a comment. Well, we don't have an opinion one way or the other. Our only opinion is that it's not a whole lot of money. It's not gonna break anybody. So, Doesn't gonna bust anybody's budgets in the next couple of years. And you guys can decide whether you want to do it or not.
Mary, do you think this is going to be conclusive? Will this help us make a decision? This is sufficient to advance our thinking down the road and not just scratching the surface? Can you help us with that a little bit?
Remaining useful life for each of these structures are, because again, structural is the main investment of the plant, but also how you repair. If it is repairable, we want to make sure if there is corrosion, what sort of repair materials we use, so that again, you don't see this issue come back in 5 years. So yes, it will be very valuable.
And your repair, does it give it a sense of then new remaining useful life? Is Is that kind of a given, or does each one of these have kind of its own, you extend it by 10 years, 20 years, depending upon what it is, electrical, mechanical, or structural? Or?
If you completely, for mechanical, electrical, if you repair or replace, there is some additional life that comes in. For structures, again, if there is going to be corrosion because of the wastewater in these basins. So we'll have to take that into consideration as well. And then we'll be able to say what remaining useful life is there, because if there is already some corrosion and we should expect some more over time, what is that asset going to last? How long before the rebar starts showing up in the basins?
Thanks.
Trustee Lincoln, you were going to make a motion?
Funds.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
I will
We have a
second
second.
that.
We have a motion. We have a second. Further discussion required? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, that brings us to agenda item 13. Attorney Yates, good evening.
Good evening. Here. Not a lot to cover this evening. The leg session, as y'all may be aware, starts on Tuesday. We're hoping to get some resolution on the Speaker of the House. There's a 2-horse race right now between David Cook and Destin Burrows. So we'll see how that shakes out next week. And hopefully from there, we'll figure out who is going to be assigned to committees and what have you, because all that's necessary for the plumbing of the legislative process. So a lot's going to be determined by how that speaker race turns out. So we're looking to see how that works out, and then we'll be monitoring bills as we do each session. Other than that, as I mentioned last month, we will have a discussion at the mud level next week about some PFAS regulations that were passed by EPA and testing requirements that will mainly be in the purview of the river authority as a wholesale provider, but we'll go through that next week. That's all I have. Happy to answer questions if you have them.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Agenda item 14, receive the general manager's report. General Manager Peterson.
We've covered most of it, but I'll talk a little bit more about this next week at the MUD meetings, but just because it's Woodlands wide, I wanted to just point out that we actually have started our ditch assessment across the Woodlands. I want to give a kudos to our new deputy GM. Kim has worked with our GIS consultant to develop an app that allows us to go out in the field and, as we're running the ditches, collect the asset, identify its characteristics, identify its condition, take a picture on the fly, do pinpoints, and the whole entire thing. So it's what I reported to the MUDs last year is that I was hoped that I'd have a lot of that done by the end of the year. As this has evolved, it's taking it just to sit there, stop, take pictures, do all the assessment. It takes a little bit longer, but I still believe that we'll be on track to have the data, be able to identify and take that data to the next level to identify potential capital improvements that will be needed. I can tell you, and I'll talk more in the MUD meetings, that there's some significant issues with some of the backslop interceptor piping, the metal piping in the ditches. And as I mentioned last year as well, that was my suspect, that we had a number of them across multiple MUDs last year fail. And it wasn't just those. It's going to be a significant thing. But we're working through that, and I'll talk more about that in the MUD meetings. I did want to point out that, and I'll be talking to Brian a little bit more about this, probably for February or March trustee meeting, but there's a resolution related to the audit that it looks at the, as per the final date of the audit, it identifies the amount of cash we have WWA on hand as it relates to the budget. And there's a resolution that states that we need to stay between 1 and 2. We typically budget right at 1, so on the lowest level, and we'll be right under that, which either requires a cash call, or if it's over 2, it would require a refund. And so I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'll be bringing back a discussion topic on that in a future meeting.
Is this a change?
It is not.
We just we were silent, or we've always been between 1 and 2 by policy.
Well, by practice, I mean, we,
By practice.
yeah, I mean, we could budget conservatively and budget a higher reserve, which would require potentially a higher admin fee to push that up, or you know, a draw from the districts to push that up. We haven't done that. And what we've done on the budget, and of course, there's some pretty significant fluctuations on the revenue side, with obviously water revenues coming in. And then there's healthcare and a couple other bigger items on the expense side that have big swings that we have to, you know, do our best to estimate. So depending on how those come in each year, you know, we could shoot for 2 and see where it goes and be real conservative, but we've shot for 1 every year and we've been right near there. So this year it looks like it's gonna be just under. So I'll bring a recommendation to the trustees for that.
And that'll be built into the next budget.
We'll address it.
Oh, address it.
Yeah, I'll address it. I'll refresh everybody's memory on the resolution and then talk about next steps. So that's all I had.
Very good. Thank you, sir. That brings us to agenda item number 5. Receive staff or ad hoc committee updates. Personnel committee did not meet, so there is no report. Audit and Finance Committee, Trustee Wilson.
We met, as you heard, we recommended the audit for approval.
Okay, and the comment about the additional funds.
Right.
There's nothing else.
Nothing else.
Very good. Public Education Committee, Trustee Gaynor.
Yes, we met today, reviewed a communications update from Holloway Environmental. And that included the final survey analysis, the project information released on the website. So that's the infrastructure renewal website. We also looked at the agenda for the community working group and developed that a little bit more. That meeting is on February the 5th at the township. And also looked into a process for identifying alternates for the community working group. And it is important that this group meets every 2 months to ensure that they keep us on track in the communications sphere. For the next phase of infrastructure communications, Holloway will be developing a scope and cost for the period of May 1 to September 30. Now, you may wonder why that is. The current contract will end on April the 30th. The current communications are, of course, funded by SJRA, with Woodlands Water managing this project. So we need to get an idea of what costs will be and figure out how we're going to handle that in that period up to the end of our financial year. We also recommend the strategic communications plan for approval, but that's going to be the next agenda item. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 16. Review and approve the revised 2025 strategic communications plan that was presented on each one of if you hadn't received it earlier, there was a link to it that was sent that Shelley developed, but this is the hard copy of it, of the strategic recommendation. Go ahead.
Yeah, as I just mentioned, the Public Education Committee recommended that the full trustee board approve this strategic communications plan. The main changes, and in my copy, I've highlighted them all, relate to the infrastructure renewal communications. And so that's the major part of the change under, let's see, background, chapter 2 background. If you go in there under item 1, you'll see a considerable addition relating to a survey. Then water renewal of Woodlands campaign. there's coordination with the consultant on that topic. And then there are a few minor word changes, but that is pretty much it. It's pretty much all relates to the infrastructure renewal communications. So that's the recommendation from the committee.
So there's been a recommendation by the committee, which requires no second. Do we need further discussion on this matter?
I'd like to have time to read it,
Comment.
to be honest with you. We just got this today.
Well, there was a link.
Send an
There
email.
was a link about a week.
And it's,
We
like,
can-
like I said, it's the same one we've been operating under for the last 2 years, with the exception of the changes that he just noted. So this is nothing new. This is, that's what, all the content that you see that John puts out with Woodlands Water Weekly and some of the emails and those things on water quality, water value, and some of the other, and the rest of the topics are what we've been operating under over the last few years. And that was developed in the fall of 2022. And then updated, and so it was approved in 2023 and implemented in 2023, updated at the beginning of last year and implemented last year. And we're coming back this year with the minor modification and for implementation this year.
I can give some examples. I mean, okay, on to chapter 3. There's 3.1 goals.
What page, yeah?
It's on page 2, towards the bottom. Goals to bring awareness of need, and then the change is for ongoing renewal of water and wastewater infrastructure to maintain quality, reliability, and value. It's this kind of wording that relates to infrastructure renewal as being the change or update. And
So like the
we get,
fourth
yeah, the fourth. Yeah. Then like each quarter, there is a focus, quarter 1, which we're in right now. So the last bullet point of the store of our water, heightened focus on infrastructure. There are 2 new items under that heading. Current renewal projects by SGRA and MUDS. MUDS are also doing renewal in addition to SGRA. And then potential future renewal projects and planning efforts for those. So they're basically, we're pivoting slightly to emphasize the water infrastructure renewal aspects of updating all the necessary infrastructure to ensure we have the best quality, the best level of service. And yeah, that's some examples.
Trustee Wiener, I have a question for you about the last portion of what you were talking about with the Halloway and ending with SJRA on April 30th and discussing costs.
Yeah.
So is that a portion of the strategic communications plan, or is that going to be somewhere in the budget that's going to be discussed later with a recommendation?
Well, this is something we need to develop with our general manager and SJRA, is how we're going to bridge the end of the contract with SJRA and the end of our financial year. We do not want to see a situation arise where at a critical moment, and as we saw in some of the timelines that we're dealing with, we really need to keep the communication effort going so people are aware of what is going on and how the money is being spent. Okay, so that has been yet to be developed. We have a few months to work through some aspects, and no doubt I guess you will be talking with Brian and so forth about how we're going to manage that.
So this would be a baton pass to financial overview and oversight of what Halloway created and taking that over. Is that kind of what I'm understanding, or is it that we would be financing Holloway's continuation with this?
Yeah, so the Holloway's contract currently is signed with SJRA, and it's in SJRA's budget, which was approved here at the trustee meeting over the last 2 years. This current budget, and it spans last year's budget as well, because they started last year. That contract ends in April. And so, and now, a few months ago, the management of that contract WWA has been managing that directly with Holloway. Estre is still involved, but we're the ones, John and I and WWA are managing it. And so when that expires, we need to figure out, one, if we want to continue, and two, how are we going to do that contractually? Because in SJA's world, when a contract expires, it's over. And so there's no continuation, there's no, and so we need to look at what, if any, additional scope there might be after that contract expires and for what duration and how much. And then at that point, we'll figure out, okay, is that something that we're going to put in the WWA budget going forward, or how are we going to fund that? So that's what Dr. Gaynor is mentioning, that we don't have those details at this point.
So that may pop up as a budget line item here in the future.
Yeah, well, because it's mid-budget, likely like tonight, we'll have to bring it up as a potential change for consideration at that point.
So to be clear, thank you.
But remember, we don't have numbers yet.
Correct.
And scope
Right.
and
Right.
detail.
There's all
that's
that to work
required.
out.
Yeah,
For sure.
okay.
Thank
Pretty
you.
much covered. Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Okay, we still have a motion on the floor from the committee. Further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. No need to recess. No need to reconvene. Discuss matters for placement on future agenda. I think we've identified a few of them.
Yeah.
Of these budgetary items. Just as an aside, you don't have any extra funds in that land acquisition account, do you, that you can slide over for us?
Next month, we'll bring up excess funds.
It's about 2-3 months away.
Yeah, I think we have dibs on some of that.
Yeah.
Always a fun time.
So, if there's no further additions to that, meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.